Have you ever looked at your life and thought, I should be happy? Maybe you've got the job, maybe you've got the house, maybe you've got the partner, the kids, the responsibilities. On paper, everything looks fine, but internally, you feel flat, disconnected, restless. Like you're living the same week over and over and over again, like Groundhog Day. And what's strange is that many men don't talk about this. They just keep moving, keep working, keep carrying the load. But underneath it all, there's this feeling that something is missing. Today, I want to talk about why so many men in their late 30s and 40s feel stuck. And more importantly, what we can do to actually help ourselves. So this is more common than you think. One of the biggest mistakes men make is assuming the only one feeling this way. But if you spend 5 minutes reading some of the conversations online, you quickly realise how common it is. In one discussion on Reddit, a man in his early 40s described life feeling like autopilot and said he was craving purpose, change, and the feeling of being alive again. Hundreds of men related to it. And in another discussion that I've had recently, a man in his mid-40s even said to me, everything's fine, but subjectively something fundamental from his life feels missing. And that line, that conversation hit me, because I think that's exactly how many men feel. I know it's how I felt when I was in my late 30s and 40s. I'd got to a point where I'd reached the pinnacle of my career. I'd got to what I thought was sort of the holy grail of my physiotherapy career. And somewhere where I thought that was impossible. Had you have asked me 10 years ago, would have thought that's impossible. I've got a house. I've got a lovely house. I've got a beautiful wife. I've got beautiful children. I've got all of these things that I was like, surely I should feel okay. But I didn't. And I think that's how many men my age are feeling. They're not broken. They're just not in a crisis. Just feel a little bit disconnected from themselves. And when you're the person that everyone depends on, it's very easy to lose sight of what you need. And I think what's interesting about it is when I was doing some research, the midlife dip is real. And there was sort of contradicting theories on the midlife crisis or a midlife dip. But what I found was that research has consistently found something called the happiness curve. So researchers were studying well-being across large populations, and they found that life satisfaction often follows a U-shaped pattern. So many people experience lower life satisfaction during midlife before it rises again in later life. Now that's important, because if you're in your late 30s, early 40s, mid 40s and questioning everything, it doesn't automatically mean that you failed. It doesn't mean you've even taken the wrong path. It might just simply mean that you've reached a stage of life where your expectations of what life was going to be like collides with what the reality is. And you start to realise that actually time moves faster than you realise it does. You might have parents that are aging, and the expectation on you is to do more for them now. So that's a change in itself. Your body doesn't recover like it used to. Your career success isn't as fulfilling as you expected it to be. And the goals that you chased in your 20s don't excite you anymore. And you might not have even revisited them now that you're 20 years older. And suddenly you're forced to ask, what now? Where do I go from here? What's the next thing? It's too late maybe to change path, but it's not. Men are carrying more than we admit. There's a reason that governments and health organisations are beginning to focus specifically on men's well-being. The UK recently launched its first national men's health strategy, partly because men are less likely to seek help and more likely to struggle in silence. Suicide remains one of the leading causes of death in men under 50. And we're also seeing more public conversations around male mental health. It's also one of the reasons why I've developed this podcast and the Instagram channel, because actually we do need to make these conversations between normal lads, normal blokes, easier to access. And I thought that was one of the ways that we could do this. I don't know whether you've seen, but there's a documentary from former England manager on the BBC, and he explores the challenges facing boys and other young men. And he looks at things like identity, purpose, mental health and direction. And if you haven't seen it, please go and see it. It's huge. It's a hugely informative program, and actually it gives some understanding of where young men are at in today's age. And honestly, I think the conversation's overdue, because many men were raised to be useful, to provide, to perform, to solve problems, but not necessarily to understand themselves or their emotions, and maybe haven't developed introspection and maybe some of that emotional intelligence alongside it. So, and maybe to not necessarily understand themselves. So when that job no longer excites them, and when the promotion doesn't feel meaningful, when the kids become more independent, many men realise they don't actually know who they are outside of that responsibility or outside of that job. So here's why fitness matters more than most people realise. As a physio and a personal trainer and a performance coach, I've become convinced that physical health isn't just about physical health. It's often the doorway that leads back to yourself. A recent survey found that most men reported exercise improves their confidence, their mood, their energy and mental well-being, and many also reported feeling significantly worse when they stopped exercising regularly. And I don't think that's because exercise magically fixes life or doesn't magically fix everything. I think it's because movement gives us things modern life takes away, often removes. Things like challenge, progress, competence, discipline, momentum. You don't have to run an ultra marathon. You don't need to have a six-pack. And if you follow me on Instagram or YouTube here for a while, then you'd know that actually one of the things that I advocate the most is actually doing some things that you enjoy doing. Find an activity that you like doing. It doesn't need to be ultra marathons. It doesn't even need to be running. It needs to be something that you can do consistently and that you actually want to take part doing. So that leads me on to, you also need to find something that reminds you that you're still growing, that you're still capable, and that you're still alive. So the real problem isn't age. I don't think that most men are struggling because they're in their 40s or late 30s. I think they're actually struggling because they've stopped challenging themselves. I know I did. I hit my 40s and my circle shrank, and I found it so uncomfortable to do anything that was outside of my comfort zone, because at some point life becomes maintenance. You pay the bills, you do the school run, you go to work, you watch Netflix, and then you repeat that. And without realising it, your world gets smaller. Mine did. Mine was micro. You stop learning, you stop exploring, you stop taking risks, you stop wanting to fail. You stop doing things voluntarily. You stop doing difficult things voluntarily. And that's when life starts to feel flat. Because we're human beings, we're not designed just to survive, we're designed to grow. So, what can we do about it? And what can you do about it if you're actually feeling stuck? So here is where I'd start. Stop waiting to feel motivated. Motivation usually comes after action, not before it. Most men are waiting to feel inspired before they start changing, or waiting for everything to fall into alignment before they do anything. But change often comes with movement, not the certainty of it. Create a new challenge. Pick something that scares you slightly, just a little bit. So that could be a high rocks event, a half marathon. It could be learning a new skill. That's the reason why I learned photography and videography, because it was slightly scary. But it's something that I wanted to do. I made a list of all the stuff that I wanted to try forever, but just haven't got around to it. And then I started ticking things off that seemed realistic, that I could maybe do in an afternoon. Things like starting a business, learning a language, trying something new like archery or hula hooping or paddle boarding. Even this, public speaking, talking into a camera, getting up on an event stage and actually challenging yourself to do something consistently. Anything, whatever it is, you need something pulling you forward. One of the other things is rebuild your physical health, not because of aesthetics, because your energy changes everything. So start looking at strength training, walking, running, sleeping properly, because your mental health is heavily influenced by your physical state. And if you don't know where to start with that, you're welcome to get in contact. You're welcome to have my advice of where you could start for free. Build real connections. So many men become isolated without noticing it. So friendships fade because life gets busy, and then suddenly you're carrying everything on your Todd. But maybe reach out first, arrange that coffee with that friend, join the running club, the photography club, the hula hoop club, whatever it is that you want to go and do, and try and be the first one that starts that conversation with another person, because usually people are really scared about having a conversation, but once you start talking, that air of trepidation is removed and people start opening up, and often people want to talk. And then lastly, ask better questions, not just of other people but of yourself. So instead of asking what's wrong with me, ask what part of me have I neglected. So you can see that they're very different questions, because one assumes that you're broken and the other one assumes that you've just drifted away from something that's important to you. So maybe feeling stuck isn't the problem. Maybe it's just a signal. Maybe it's your mind telling you that you've built a life that just needs an upgrade, not a complete destruction, not a sports car, although the VW van's nice. But it's also not running away, it's just growth. Because men that I see thriving in their 30s, 40s and 50s aren't the men trying to become younger. They're the men who continue to evolve. They stay curious, they stay active, they keep challenging themselves, and they build purpose instead of waiting to find it. And perhaps that's the real opportunity of midlife, not going backwards, but to become someone new. I'm going to leave you with that statement. I hope this has helped. If it has, drop something in the comments to let me know. Hopefully next week I'll have a personal trainer with me. However, it's been quite difficult booking people in over the summer term. So if you do know anybody that wants to be a part of this project with me, or if you know somebody that wants to have a conversation around men's health, or a topic on men's health, then drop it in the comments, let me know, or DM me, let me know who they are, so that I can reach out to them and book them in. This is as much for me as it is for you, so I hope this has helped, and until next time, keep maintaining your inner edge, and I'll see you next week.